A book on the shelf is just paper. A book in your mind is power. Welcome to Season 1, Money and Mindset. We are here to rewrite your internal script. Let's decode.
Most people don't hate work. They hate how much control it has over their life.
Being busy feels productive, but it rarely means you're building anything intentional.
Today, we are decoding the 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss.
Not as a promise of working less, but as a system for understanding how time, income, and control are actually structured.
Now, it's really easy to hear that title and, just dismiss it.
Sure. As pure fantasy, or maybe worse, just a collection of get-rich-quick tactics.
But when you actually look beneath the surface of the book, the core objective is, it's radically structural. Freedom, as the source defines it, isn't achieved through just grinding harder or increasing your personal productivity.
No, it's achieved through meticulous system design. It's an architectural problem, not a motivational one.
And that is the critical distinction we need to make today.
It is. The whole mission here is to analyze the philosophy that underpins the entire framework, to move past that surface-level advice.
And that philosophy really centers on a few non-negotiable elements.
3, really. First, the ruthless elimination of what the author calls false constraints.
The things we think we have to do.
Exactly. Second, the absolute decoupling of your time from your value.
And third,
the radical, intentional act of designing your life rather than just passively inheriting the default path that society lays out for you.
And that intentional design philosophy, it creates a new class of people that the book is aimed at. He calls them the new rich.
The new rich, or NR. And they're defined by their wholesale rejection of what he calls the deferred life plan.
The idea that you work for 40 years to enjoy the last 15.
Right. The NR understand that time, mobility, and choice, those are the true currencies. And they use this system, lifestyle design, to acquire those luxuries right now, in the present.
It's a massive shift away from that conventional goal of just accumulating abstract capital for a future that, you might never even reach.
It's about acquiring concrete control for a life you want to live right now.
So if the new rich are defined by this pursuit of control and mobility today, then the first step has to be understanding the structural system they're trying to escape in the first place.
Let's start right there, because the book's target isn't just the cubicle farm. It's an entire outdated cultural agreement.
Okay, so what is that primary target?
It's the assumption, and it's deeply embedded in our society, that a rewarding life one filled with travel, passion projects, recovery, that all has to be postponed.
For 15, 30, even 40 years.
Until you reach some vague number, right? X dollars in the bank. Or you hit the official retirement age.
The deferred life plan. This assumes that sacrificing the best years of your physical and mental health now will somehow pay off later.
When you're theoretically less able to even enjoy them.
Right.
And the cost of this path, as it's detailed in the source, is framed in really severe terms. Premature aging, fueled by these impossibly heavy workloads, sustained for decades.
He compares it to trying to work 24 hours a day for 15 years.
Which is a physiological impossibility. The system demands an unsustainable output over an unnaturally long period.
So what the New Rich perspective offers is a structural inversion of that model. They're not aiming for eventual total inactivity.
No, not at all. They're aiming for the strategic distribution of recovery and adventure.
So instead of one big retirement at the end, it's
what the book calls mini retirements. Recurring periods of travel or learning or pursuing non-vocational passions, but distributed throughout your entire life.
So you're recharging along the way.
Precisely. They recognize that delaying all rewards causes this cumulative mental and physical breakdown. By distributing recovery periods and adventures now, you maintain a much higher baseline quality of life. You avoid the burnout that's just inherent in a 40-year deferral plan.
But if people aren't literally forced into this intense delayed system, why do so many of us continue to stick with it, even when we dislike our jobs?
Well, that delay often pushes people into a second, and I think more insidious trap.
Which is busyness.
Busyness. The most dangerous psychological state, according to this analysis, isn't pure, unavoidable misery.
Because pure health forces you to act.
It forces immediate action, yeah. The real trap is a tolerable and comfortable existence doing something unfulfilling.
Because when things are just tolerable, you can rationalize them.
You can rationalize them forever. It'll get better next quarter, or if I just get this one promotion, and that tracks people indefinitely.
And that rationalization just feeds the beast. He calls it work for work's sake, W4W.
And the book defines being busy as a form of laziness.
That's a strong claim. Lazy thinking.
Lazy thinking and indiscriminate action. It's just the easy default. I mean, think about the 9-to-5 illusion. If you're a salaried employee, your presence and your effort are fixed inputs, right? It doesn't matter what the necessary output is.
So if the system demands you fill 8 hours, you will find a way to fill 8 hours.
You will. Time is wasted simply because it's available. There's often no incentive to use it well. Minor tasks just swell to consume the entire container of time.
And you end the day feeling exhausted, even if you achieve nothing of real value.
Yes, and that exhaustion validates the busyness. It makes it feel like true productivity.
So that's where the real philosophical leap has to happen. The solution to escaping these inherited structures lies in realizing that the rules governing that 9-to-5 reality, they're not immutable.
Reality is fundamentally a negotiable construct. Ferriss argues that the common sense rules of the real world, the need to work 40 hours, the need for physical presence in an office, are just a fragile collection of socially reinforced illusions.
They exist because nobody has successfully and, publicly challenged them yet.
So the goal is to become a deal maker, someone who constantly tests these basic assumptions and actively looks for the unexploited opportunities hidden within the existing rule set.
The examples he gives are really compelling because they show success that's achieved not through superior effort, but through system exploitation.
Let's talk about the Chinese kickboxing championship, Sanshu.
Right. The author wasn't the most skilled fighter in the tournament.
Not at all. He won by reading the fine print of the rules.
There was a specific technicality.
A technicality that said if an opponent fell off the elevated platform 3 times in a single round, the fight ended. A technical knockout.
So he realized that exploiting that rule was a faster, much lower effort path to victory than trying to win by being a better striker.
He just pushed his opponents off the platform. He achieved a win through system analysis and a technicality, not through conventional brute force.
This is the same principle we saw play out in sports history with the Fosbury flop in high jumping.
For decades, the dominant technique, the sacred cow, was the straddle. Everyone just assumed that was the optimal way to get over the bar.
Until Dick Fosbury in 1968.
He challenged that fundamental assumption by going over the bar backward. People laughed. They thought it looked ridiculous, non-conventional.
But he won the gold medal.
And he proved it was a superior physical system. Within a decade, the straddle was basically obsolete. The point is that success often requires killing sacred cows, challenging the most deeply held yet unexamined rules of your own field.
And in this case, your career model.
That brings us to the core realization then, that freedom in this context, it's not a feeling, it's not a passive state. It is an active, structured system designed for leverage.
Right. Most conventional business or self-help advice, it focuses on individual productivity tactics. How to do more in less time.
This whole philosophy shifts the focus to structural redesign. The idea is, if you are truly trapped, the problem isn't your competence.
It's the vehicle.
The problem is usually the vehicle, the business model, the life structure, not the driver, the person operating within it.
That's a huge psychological shift. It means you stop optimizing your effort and you start optimizing your environment.
And true power, therefore, is not having immense capital. It's having options, the ability to choose.
And these options have to be created with the least possible effort and cost.
Specifically through system architecture, yes. When you design a system that introduces leverage, you find, paradoxically, that you can often generate more money by doing half of what you were doing before.
So the ultimate objective of this structural redesign is the explicit, absolute decoupling of time from value.
That's the only mechanism that truly frees up both your time and automates your income. Because if your income is always tied to your hourly presence, you are simply a highly paid laborer.
You're just running out your time.
Exactly. The system demands that the new rich objective is not to find a dream job where you enjoy trading time, but to build or utilize mechanisms where the revenue stream continues whether you are actively involved or not.
And once that time and location are liberated, a very specific strategic advantage is unlocked. Geographic arbitrage.
This is one of the most powerful and immediate financial levers detailed in the source. Geographic arbitrage is the phenomenon where a liberated, automatically generated income, usually earned in a strong currency like US dollars or euros, is suddenly worth 3 to 10 times as much.
Just because you've relocated.
Simply because you have relocated to a lower cost of living environment.
Can you walk us through the mechanics of that? I mean, it sounds a little abstract, but it's a very specific structural choice.
It's highly mechanical. So consider a passive income stream of, say, $5,000 a month.
Okay.
If you maintain an apartment in Manhattan or London, that $5,000 might feel pretty tight. It might feel insufficient.
For sure.
Now, if you move to a city like Medellin, Colombia, or Chiang Mai, Thailand, that same $5,000 suddenly carries the spending power of a very high senior executive salary in that local economy.
Because your expenses just plummet.
Your expenses, rent, transport, food, they drop by 60, maybe 80%.
So the money isn't just worth more theoretically. It translates into an immediate physical reality of lifestyle expansion just by shifting your geographical operating base.
Correct. You've structurally optimized the output of your income without changing the income itself. You're using the differential in currency rates and local cost structures as a tool for immediate wealth multiplication.
Which is why the freedom of time and location is the prerequisite for maximizing the value of your income stream.
You have to have both.
Okay, so if geographic arbitrage is the payoff, the roadmap for achieving this systemic freedom is the sequential process he calls the deal framework.
Definition, elimination, automation, and liberation.
And it's crucial to pause here because you stress that the sequence matters and it's context dependent.
It is. The application depends entirely on the role of the individual. For an entrepreneur who's already the direct beneficiary of profit, they can proceed DEAL.
Build the profit system first, then use it for freedom.
Right. But the sequence is inverted for the traditional employee.
The employee pass has to be DELA. Why the critical inversion there?
Because of the expectation of presence. In a fixed office environment, the social contract requires constant motion and presence from 9 to 5.
So even if an employee implements elimination and becomes twice as productive,
let's say they produce 200% more output in 10 hours a week. If they're visibly working a quarter of the hours of their colleagues, management will not reward them with free time.
no. They'll see that efficiency and just demand that the now efficient employee work 40 hours a week and produce 8 times the results for the same salary.
Exactly. The fixed expectation of presence, that work for work's sake mindset we talked about, it prevents the employee from reaping the time benefits of automation and elimination.
So they have to get out of the office first.
Therefore, the employee must first achieve liberation, escaping the fixed presence expectations, before they can truly utilize the benefits of time efficiency without interference. Their first negotiation is for space, not for profit.
Let's delve into the mechanics of that framework then, starting with D for definition. Calculating the intentional life.
This is where the aspirational goals get a price tag. It's a process called dreamlining.
Dreamlining is the mechanism that forces a radical redefinition of wealth.
It shifts the entire focus away from accumulating arbitrary possessions or abstract capital and toward defining wealth based on concrete, actionable experiences.
I think this is where the book is most challenging to conventional wisdom. We're all taught that the goal is financial freedom, which usually just means saving X million dollars.
Yeah.
Dreamlining makes you actually define that X.
Yes, it converts vague aspirational goals, things you want to have or want to be, into measurable depths. Doing steps, complete with specific costs and deadlines.
So I want to be a best-selling author is useless.
It's useless. The goal is converted to the actionable, measurable step of sell 20,000 copies per week for 6 months, or take 2 months of intensive Spanish lessons in Buenos Aires.
And this highly detailed process forces you to calculate the true target monthly income, or TMI, required to fund those immediate concrete experiences.
And this TMI calculation constantly counters the fear of that mythical retirement goal. When you price out the actual trips, the lessons, the unique services you genuinely want in the next 12 weeks.
The resulting number is often shockingly lower than the implied $5 million or $10 million required for a standard retirement.
The fear is often attached to an abstract, unexamined number. Dreamlining removes the arbitrary targets and anchors the entire system in a measurable reality.
It shifts the focus from accumulating abstract millions, which requires constant delayed effort,
to generating the concrete cash flow needed for a small handful of desirable, high-impact experiences, which encourages mobility and often decreases the overall monthly cost.
And that lower than expected TMI is the psychological leverage point that makes the next step possible.
E for elimination. The author calls this the path of selective ignorance.
This is where you focus ruthlessly on the important few and ignore the vast, time-consuming remainder.
The foundational principle here is the 80-20 rule, Pareto's law. 80% of your desired consequences flow from 20% of the causes or effort.
But the source is clear. This is not a gentle suggestion. It's a call for radical surgery.
Because that ratio is often much more severe. It's often 955 or even 991.
We see a perfect illustration of this in one of the book's anecdotes about an entrepreneur running a wholesale business. He was working over 80 hours a week.
Just drowning in customer inquiries and managing logistics. So he conducted an 80-20 analysis.
And the truth was devastating. He was spending 98% of his time dealing with and chasing 95% of his customer base.
And these were the low-volume, high-maintenance clients.
So the difficult, cold, analytical decision was to fire 98% of his customers and just stop actively contacting the low-profit remainder.
And the immediate counterintuitive result was a doubling of his monthly income from $30,000 to $60,000.
While simultaneously dropping his working hours from over 80 to about 15 per week.
That's the power of elimination.
Wait, I have to challenge that, though. Firing 98% of your customer base sounds like professional suicide to most people. Doesn't that risk the long-term stability of the business just for short-term gain?
That's the conventional thinking. But the philosophy of the new rich prioritizes profit per unit of time and effort, not maximum revenue. By eliminating the vast majority of non-profitable time expenditure, he created a massive margin of safety and time flexibility. The business that remained was incredibly high leverage and robust because it was focused entirely on that high-value 2%.
It's a brutal logic, but effective.
And elimination works best when you combine it with Parkinson's law.
Right. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill the time available for its completion.
So if you give a task 3 days, it will take 3 days, even if it could be done in 30 minutes. The synergistic approach is to use 80-20 to limit tasks to the critical few.
And then use Parkinson's law by imposing extremely short, clear deadlines to force focused action.
If you don't set aggressive start and end times, those minor, unimportant tasks will inevitably swell and consume the entire day.
Satisfying that need to feel busy, that W4W we talked about.
And a major, insidious source of that time consumption is information itself, which is why the low information diet is considered absolutely critical to the elimination phase.
The Nobel laureate Herbert Simon said a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention.
Information consumes our attention, yeah. And the diet requires cultivating selective ignorance. You have to ruthlessly ignore or redirect all information that is irrelevant, unimportant, or unactionable.
He gives some practical examples, right?
He does. Things like only consuming a maximum of 1/3 of a few industry magazines per month, or relying on trusted, informed friends to synthesize major news events for you.
The rule is simple. If information does not directly affect a critical action, you must take this week. Ignore it.
Drastically decreasing your input, the data you absorb, is the prerequisite for increasing focused output.
And this leads directly to the tactic of interrupting interruption, specifically mastering batching.
Email is identified as the biggest single source of time fragmentation in the modern world.
Because it turns your life into a reactive sequence of other people's priorities.
The strategy is simple, but it's psychologically very difficult to implement. Turn off all alerts, turn off automatic send receive, and check email only twice per day.
At noon and 4 p.m., he suggests. Or, in extreme cases, for deep focus work, maybe once a week.
The logic of batching relies on reducing what he calls setup charges, or the mental context switching costs.
So if you check your email or pay bills 5 times a week, you incur that cognitive switching cost 5 times.
But if you batch those repetitive tasks and do them only once a week, the total time spent can be cut by half or more, because the setup cost, reorienting your mind, opening the program, deciding where to start, is only incurred once.
It's like the setup charges for printing t-shirts. They're the same whether you print 3 shirts or 200. You absorb the cost once and maximize the yield of that focus.
And the fear that stops most people, the fear of missing an emergency, is often an illusion that needs analytical treatment. The book encourages you to analyze the real cost of batching problems.
So missing a small deadline, losing a minor sale.
Versus the financial and emotional benefit of reclaiming hundreds of hours of focused time. If the cost of the problem is less than the value of the time saved, you're structurally obligated to continue batching.
It's a cold analytical decision based purely on the ROI of your attention.
And that attention you reclaim is what funds the next stage. Moving on to A for automation.
This is the step where the reliance on individual effort shifts entirely to structural leverage, building what he calls the Muse architecture.
The Muse is precisely defined as an automated vehicle for generating cash flow without consuming the owner's time.
And it has to meet some really strict criteria.
It does. It has to be inexpensive to test, preferably under $500. It must automate quickly. And once it's running, it must require less than 1 day per week of management.
So the Muse is designed purely for time and financial freedom, not for high-growth venture capital or an IPO.
Right. And that necessity for low maintenance dictates a specific product selection logic. The source strongly prioritizes information products guides, CDs, downloadable courses.
Why information products specifically?
Structurally, they offer incredibly high profit margins, often 8x to 50x markup, and they carry near zero inventory costs. More critically, they're time-consuming for competitors to duplicate.
So it's easier to circumvent a patent on a physical good.
Then it is to paraphrase and redesign an entire course or guide to avoid copyright infringement. It builds a moat around the product based on informational complexity.
And the ideal price point for this automated product is surprisingly specific, $50 to $200. Why such a narrow window?
That range acts as a dual filtering mechanism. First, it ensures high margins, so you need to sell fewer units to meet your target monthly income.
Then second.
Second, and maybe more importantly, the higher pricing actively filters for lower maintenance customers. People who generally have better credit, fewer complaints, and fewer time-consuming questions.
Because products priced higher than $200 often necessitate direct phone sales or personalized consultations.
Which immediately violates the principle of automation and the low information diet.
So once the profitable product is defined, the system relies on designing the outsourcing infrastructure using geographic and labor arbitrage.
This involves creating a virtual architecture where the entire operation from order taking and payment processing to customer service and fulfillment is handled by contracted third parties.
So you're using specialized fulfillment houses and VAs in places like India or the Philippines for a fraction of Western labor costs.
And you create a powerful business dynamic. In fact, the source makes a bold claim about this outsourcing structure, that it makes negative cash flow impossible.
How is that even possible?
It's a design feature. In this outsourced structure, the product is sold and the money is collected first. The services, the dropshipping fee, the payment to the VA, the fulfillment costs are all paid after the cash is already in hand.
So that instantaneous timing disconnect means the architecture is built on positive cash flow and removes the risk of capital outlays before you generate revenue.
And the crucial underlying principle in automation is the rule of delegation. The operational mantra is never automate something that can be eliminated and never delegate something that can be automated or streamlined.
Delegation has to be used to reduce the principal's workload and remove them as the bottleneck, not just transfer an inefficient process onto someone else's plate.
We saw this play out in the example of his Brain Quicken business, which was getting over 200 emails a day, mostly from outsourced reps just seeking permission for small actions.
The problem wasn't the reps. It was the system architecture that required the owner to be the centralized decision maker.
And the solution was simple but radically effective. He granted all reps explicit, written permission to solve any customer problem costing less than $100 without consultation.
What were the results?
It immediately dropped the daily interrupting emails to fewer than 20 per week for the owner. It wasn't about the specific dollar amount. It was about transferring decision-making ability and watching the IQ seem to double when the employee or contractor was granted autonomy and trust.
So they solved problems faster, more effectively, and returned far fewer issues to the principal.
Which finally brings us to L for liberation, the mobile manifesto. And for the employee, this is the escape strategy.
The negotiation sequence for an employee needs to be carefully orchestrated.
First, you have to increase your value to the company through investment. Get the company to pay for specialized training, making you more expensive and difficult to lose. Then you prove radically high productivity using the 80-20 rule.
So once you have that leverage, the actual proposal to work remotely has to be framed using what he calls the puppy dog close.
Suggesting a reversible trial. You start small. Ask to work remotely just on Mondays and Tuesdays. This gradual, non-confrontational approach gives management an easy way to say yes without panicking.
Because they know the arrangement can be reversed if output drops.
The ultimate goal is to gain leverage, making it demonstrably more painful for the company to fire you or revoke that flexibility than it is to just grant you the freedom.
And once that mobility is secured, the new rich embrace mini retirements.
These are defined as recurring relocations lasting anywhere from 1 to 6 months. They serve as a re-examination of life, not just a temporary escape.
They're a core lifestyle component, unlike a one-time sabbatical that often just leads to burnout again immediately afterward.
And the minimum duration is key. The source suggests 2 to 3 months is necessary to truly unplug from obsolete routines and move beyond simple sightseeing.
Because that duration allows for genuine cultural immersion. It ensures the traveler is changed by the experience rather than just observing it from the outside.
And again, the economic argument reinforces this choice. Relocating to a low-cost area for 2 months often costs less than a week in a nice hotel, and the expenses abroad often replace, at a much lower cost, the bills you can cancel or pause back home.
So the system leverages geographic arbitrage to make the time-off structure financially self-sustaining.
But even with this detailed logical system, the deal framework, most people still struggle to implement it fully.
Which brings us to the biggest bottleneck of all, the psychological resistance to freedom itself.
The fundamental resistance is the comfort of the known. Why choose the chaos of the unknown when the unhappiness of the known is at least predictable?
Most people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. They fear change more than they dislike their current situation.
And this manifests frequently as optimistic denial, the comforting hallucination that a boring, unfulfilling job will eventually improve on its own.
That things will just get better with time or with a minor pay increase.
This avoidance allows people to postpone radical action indefinitely.
The book positions fear not as a weakness, but as scary noises in the shadows. It's this vague anxiety that prevents rational movement.
Yeah.
That amorphous fear of, what if it all fails?
And the antidote to that vague anxiety is a concrete, analytical exercise called fear setting.
This mechanism requires you to sit down and define the absolute nightmare scenario in excruciating, concrete detail.
Right. What if the business fails? What if I get sued? How quickly would my bank account actually crater?
By defining the nightmare, you move the risk from this ambiguous dread to a set of manageable, measurable risks.
But definition is only half the process. Once the nightmare scenario is defined, the next crucial step is to realistically calculate the probability and, most importantly, the cost and difficulty of recovery.
So you ask, what's the temporary minimum effort required to get back to baseline?
Exactly. Could you take a temporary bartending job for 6 months? Could you sell some non-essential assets? The insight you reach through this process is typically that the risk you're taking, the downside, is often highly unlikely and temporary, maybe a 3 or 4 in impact.
Whereas the potential upside, the permanent life change and control, is probable and permanent, a 9 or a 10.
When you analytically treat fear as a calculable input, the equation usually makes radical action the most logical choice.
But let's fast forward. The system works. You've successfully implemented a deal, you've eliminated the negative workload, a new psychological challenge emerges.
The void.
Right.
Successfully subtracting the bad, eliminating the soul-crushing work, does not automatically create the good. Too much idle time becomes fertilizer for self-doubt and assorted mental tail-chasing.
But this is why even successfully retired or ultra-rich individuals often feel profoundly unfulfilled or neurotic.
The external scaffolding of endless responsibility has been removed, and the mind just struggles to fill the resulting emptiness.
So the solution is the deliberate introduction of an ambitious external focus that forces personal growth. You need a purpose that's larger than the system you just built.
This could be structured service, or specifically mentioned in the source as the best tool, learning a new language.
Why a new language?
It's presented as the best activity to hone clear thinking because it provides a second lens through which to question and understand the world. It forces your focus externally and prevents the mind from turning inward and just inventing new problems to solve.
So the philosophical takeaway here is a strict filter for your attention. Before you spend time worrying about a question, especially a stress-inducing one, you have to ensure the answer is yes to 2 criteria.
Are the terms defined? And can the answer be acted upon to improve things?
If you can't define the terms precisely or act on the answer, like the perennial "what is the meaning of life" or "why did my previous boss treat me poorly?"
It's defined as a non-worthy question, and your mind's attention should be immediately redirected to actionable growth or an external focus.
If we zoom back out, the underlying logic of this entire philosophy is a core engineering principle. Systems quietly compound, while individual effort scales poorly and is inherently fragile.
Absolutely. If a business or a life structure relies fundamentally on the owner's constant presence, energy, or decision-making ability, it has a fatal flaw.
The owner is a single point of failure.
And the business is fundamentally unscalable because the owner is the constant bottleneck.
So the solution lies in applying the principle of redundancy and scalability to the outsourcing infrastructure. You have to build a system that doesn't care if one person quits.
Therefore, you must contract specialized outsourcing companies or teams rather than relying on individual freelancers whenever possible. A group structure provides internal redundancy and a pool of cross-trained talent.
So the system should be architected to handle 10,000 orders per week as easily as 10.
And that's achieved primarily by ruthlessly minimizing the owner's involvement in routine decision-making.
This intense focus on maximizing system efficiency and minimizing the principal's cognitive load leads to what he calls the choice minimal lifestyle.
The true enemy of high output is not the number of decisions you make, but deliberation. The time spent vacillating over options, trying to decide what to wear, where to eat, how to phrase an email.
The choice minimal lifestyle uses strict rules and automation to eliminate that constant cognitive drag.
So we're talking about automating low-value decisions using preset rules.
Exactly. This includes implementing preset processing rules for your VAs, and perhaps most importantly, creating rigid not-to-do lists.
Like not answering unrecognized calls.
Not checking email first thing in the morning, not postponing decisions just to avoid uncomfortable conversations. All of it is designed to protect your attention and reserve your decision-making capacity for only the highest leverage activities.
And we return to that powerful principle we touched on earlier, empowering autonomy for efficiency.
By transferring the ability to solve small, inexpensive problems directly to the employees or contractors responsible, you save massive amounts of management time.
The example of giving customer service reps the authority to fix problems under $100 shows that this empowerment results in faster service and often lower returns because the process is no longer centralized and dependent on the principal's approval.
It's a double benefit: time saved to the owner and increased effectiveness for the employee. The system trusts the frontline operator.
And the system must also actively incorporate customer filtering and margin safety. The NR policy is clear. The system should actively repel low-profit, high-maintenance customers.
How does the system achieve that repulsion?
Through simple structural policies designed for efficiency, not maximum reach. This includes eliminating complex options like overnight shipping, refusing international orders if they require custom forms, and eliminating phone orders entirely.
These complexities are the 80% of effort that produce 20% of revenue.
And they must be ruthlessly eliminated.
And the margin safety is enforced through pricing and refund policies. The $5,200 high-margin pricing acts as a filter, and surprisingly, the book advocates for strict but generous refund policies.
Specifically, the source discusses implementing a 2x money-back guarantee. Now, this seems counterintuitive and really risky.
I'd say.
However, the analysis showed that this guarantee increased sales by 200%, despite only a minor increase in returns, and that resulted in massive net revenue gains.
It's a psychological tool. It shifts the burden of risk off the customer, increasing conversion, while simultaneously filtering out those who might cause trouble later.
The system is designed not for maximum revenue or maximum custom account,
but for maximum profit in the least time with the least effort.
So in decoding this book today, we need to briefly invest the framework to the modern context, because while the book's specific tools evolve, the underlying structural principles remain potent.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The foundational principles of system design are now reinforced by digital infrastructure that is far more robust than it was when the book was first written.
Things like remote desktop access, VoIP, robust collaboration tools, they allow for near-perfect invisibility and location independence.
The concept of running a sophisticated operation from anywhere in the world is not just accepted anymore, it's pretty standard.
And the power of time zone arbitrage is now exponential. The source detailed that anecdote of an individual working from Norway 9 hours ahead of their U.S. office.
Who was able to explore all day and then handle all necessary communication during a short, focused window when the boss woke up.
The large, uninterrupted blocks of personal time are the key reward. The delay inherent in the time zone forces the individual to batch their communication and eliminates the possibility of being constantly interrupted.
Maximizing focused output.
Furthermore, the core concepts of outsourcing and delegation are now finding a new frontier in AI tools. These function conceptually similarly to the Amazon Mechanical Turk service mentioned in the source,
allowing for the automation of microtasks and even routine decision-making far beyond what was previously possible.
But the essential skill hasn't changed. The challenge is not using the technology. It's defining the system within which the technology operates.
You still have to define clear parameters, eliminate unnecessary inputs, and treat new technology as a tool for leverage, not an excuse for more task management.
And the permanent importance of self-inventory remains the core challenge for the new rich. The most significant difficulty is less about how to automate and more about what to automate and why.
The lesson of the choice minimal lifestyle reducing deliberation is critical in an age of infinite digital inputs and choices.
The necessary discipline is the ongoing self-interrogation. Are you inventing things to do to avoid the important task?
This book isn't a manual, it's a filter.
It shows you which parts of your life are leverage and which parts are just noise disguised as responsibility.
If this episode changed how you think about work and time, the decoding worked.
And if you want to keep seeing beneath the surface one book at a time, subscribe to Decoded by Morrow.
We don't replace books, we decode them.
The systems we've discussed today are built on the rejection of effort scaling poorly. So our final thought for you to consider is this. If your current effort scales linearly, define your personal minimum effective load.
What is the 20% of effort that produces 80% of desired results in your current structure?
And what happens if you ruthlessly eliminate the remaining 80% of non-essential activities starting this week?
A book on the shelf is just paper. A book in your mind is power.
You've reached the end of this exploration, but not the end of the idea. Let it echo. Let it integrate. And when you're ready for the next step, return to Decoded by Morrow. Wisdom is a journey, not a conclusion. Let's decode.